We have the staff report on the posting of the agenda.
The agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall bulletin board on the west side of City Council chambers and the planning department counter, all in accordance with the city code.
Thank you. Does the board have any revisions to the agenda? Any revisions? Okay, now please have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
And so we have a motion. Can we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. So second by member Hare.
Here.
And the motion made by Hanson. Is there any discussion about the agenda? Okay, seeing none, then I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? No. So now we have, how many members? 7, huh? So the motion passes 7-0. So this is the time that's set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There'll be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings are taken at the time of that hearing. So has anyone requested to comment on a non-public hearing item or an item not on the agenda?
No, staff hasn't received any non-public agenda item.
I will. I have a quick one. Can I do it? This is outside of my head. So when I was researching this
Can
project,
you state your?
oh, sorry, Steve Payline, Palm Springs. When I was researching this project, I went to the Historical Society and found out that Renee, I believe her name is Renee Brown, is retiring in a month or so, or a couple months,
I didn't
fairly
know that.
soon.
Thank you.
And apparently there is no replacement for her.
What
So
does that mean exactly?
she couldn't tell me, as in, no, like, I don't know. So I just thought I'd bring it up to this board to see, you know, if there's, you know, if it was of public interest for someone to take that role, or at least so people know that that's a role that potentially is going away. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate hearing that. On the consent calendar, we have 3 sets of meeting minutes for approval and review of the resolution language for the historic designation of the Atakean building as a Class 2 site. All 3 of these matters may be acted upon by one motion unless an individual item is requested to be removed for separate discussion. So I will first ask for any corrections on each set of the minutes, and then we'll take one vote at the conclusion of those. Are there any corrections on the minutes of July 5th? July 5, 2023 meeting? Were there any corrections, anyone? They're excellent minutes. I didn't have any. Okay, how about any corrections on the minutes of September 5th, 2023? Yes, Member Hanson.
I just had maybe more a point of clarification on page 7 of 8. Under the annual work program, the 3rd paragraph, last sentence. It says, as a certified local government and annual training is required, Member Hanson would like to know if there is budget for training opportunities. What I meant is for board members.
Mhm.
And would like to see additional training related to the application of the city's context statements and designation criteria. I just thought it seemed a little clearer to say designation criteria,
Mhm,
and that was all.
mhm. That's good correction. Were there any other corrections for those minutes? Okay, so then the third set are the minutes of October 3rd, 2023. I didn't attend that meeting, so I can't comment about that. Anyone have any corrections? October 3. Okay. So then the last item on the consent calendar is the review of the HSPB draft resolution for the historic designation of the Atakean building, which is HSPB number 147 as a class 2 site. Are there any comments, corrections, or clarifications to discuss?
You wanna? Yeah, I just had a couple of clarifications to the character defining features
Mhm.
on page. I'm sorry, what was it? Oh. Page 4. Something else. Page 4 of 5 of the resolution. Happened to the. It's gone off the bottom. We had, the copy that was in the packet is different than. Well. Anyway, there should be a final bullet point that says gutters, downspouts, and flashing details are non-contributing. Somehow that got left off. And that was on the previous, original draft that we saw.
Just for, is that thin square, steel tubing which outlines? the
No,
structure?
well, there's a correction to that one too. It should just say the awning supports. Because the thin square tubing was what they were originally, so now it's just the existing now awning supports are non-contributing, and then there's the parenthetical statement. That awning supports were originally square steel tubes,
Okay, and then gutters,
and then gutters, downspouts, and flashing details is a final bullet.
mhm. And I have it on mine.
You do, okay, that's weird. Did you see that?
Yeah, so do I.
Oh, no, there it is. It's there. Sorry.
It actually
Okay,
doesn't have a bullet. It's-
Yeah.
It's included, that's
So it
probably,
just needs to be bulleted,
yeah,
and that's all.
yeah. Any other, comments? Yes, member.
Yeah, I can remember a lot of discussion around an arch. And I know there are a couple arches at the property. And it's hard to do this without having a photo right now. So in the future, I would when we're confirming or approving a final resolution that we have some pictures of the character defining features. Sure, because it's a good thing to do when you're making a final decision. I am fairly certain that the main entry of the building where the doors are and they're cut to fit what is an arch. And a vintage photograph. I think the earliest known photo of Damalak shows some
Yeah,
kind.
that's the wrong, this resolution is relating to the Atikian building, the commercial building downtown.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's where I was
Better tonight for.
trying to figure that
Good
out.
reason.
No problem.
Sorry.
Okay, so, are there any other comments or corrections or clarifications to discuss? Any others? Oh, okay, so, we just have that minor correction. So may I please have a motion to accept the 3 sets of minutes as corrected, and the final language for the resolution.
So moved.
Okay, so I have a motion by Maruzi and a second by. Go on.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So is there any discussion? Yes,
Sure. I will be abstaining from 1B since I was absent that day, so.
okay, and
It'll be go, you can go with my.
yeah, and I didn't attend the October meeting, so I will abstain from the vote as well. So. Any other discussion or comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye, and any opposed? Okay, so we have, 2 abstentions. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yays, so the motion passes. Very good, thank you, that was pretty painless, wasn't it? Okay, so, moving right along, there are no public hearings or any unfinished business today, so let us proceed to agenda item 4A under new business. So this, I'll just read this statement. This is a request by Deborah S. Greco for approval of a major alteration to a class 3 site located at 1041 East Twin Palms Drive and associated review for potential redesignation of a class 4 site to a class 1 or 2 historic resource. So, may we please have a staff report on that?
Yes. So the item before HSBD tonight is for the property address 1041 Twin Palms Drive in the Twin Palms Estates neighborhood. So the owners are requesting from HSBD approval to proceed with major alteration to a class 3 site. The home is a single family home built in the residential tract development by the Alexander Construction Company in the mid to late 1950s. It is zoned R1C. So just a little bit of historic context here. During the post-World War II period in Palm Springs, the development of residential subdivisions began to take off, and developers like the Alexander Construction Company jumped the mix of developing these neighborhoods. In the context paper for the post-World War II period, provided by the city, there's a robust description of the various subdivisions that were created during this time, and it does include some more detail about the Twin Palms Estates. With a couple of floor plans and an array of different roof plans, homes were built. And typically we see these homes adjoining a carport and a swimming pool on a 10,000 square foot lot. And so there's some images that were pulled from the context report that shows the Twin Palms Estate. The red delineates actually the site that we are talking about today. As seen during the site visit, here are some images of the home. From the street, we can make out that the home is actually behind a masonry wall that was built in 1997. The carport was enclosed and turned into a garage. When we went to the backside of the home, we were able to see the poor level of construction associated with how that carport was enclosed. It did create a bit of an awkward condition for usability.
Sorry,
Oh,
we have someone trying to join. Just have to let them in.
the next slide here focuses on the various alterations that have occurred over the years. An addition was added to the home on the west side. A door was added to the front elevation. next to the original entrance that you see in that middle image there. And then the image to the far right is that wall that was constructed in 1997 that expands and covering much of the front elevation we're seeing from this street.
Again. There we go.
Okay. So when HSBB reviews alterations that have been made to a class 3 site, they are tasked to determine if the current property merits historic landmark status, which means they have to evaluate the property against the designation criteria that's listed in section 8.05.70 and the integrity findings. While the home reflects the post-World War II period of residential development in Palm Springs, and is associated with the developer, George Alexander of the Alexander Construction Company, as a tract home in the Turnpike Estate, staff finds that the home on its own doesn't merit or exhibit exceptional historic significance at that time period, nor does the current state of the home reflect a strong representation of the developer's work. Many aspects of the material and design integrity have been lost over time with these various alterations. And the changes made to the property and to the building itself. As mentioned before, HSBB has two options in this case, either to make the findings for historic designation for historic significance and place a state of alteration in this instance, so that and then also pursue the designation process, or to determine if the property as it stands today is insufficient for meeting those findings to be landmarked and take no action. Staff finds again that the property does not meet the necessary criteria for historic designation, therefore recommends HSBB take no action and allow the applicant to pursue their proposed project for alteration with the recommendation to keep that height of the roof for the new ADU to remain subservient to the main house. This recommendation was recorded. The applicant did provide revisions, so the revised design is in your packet, but we did want to keep that in there just to reiterate that it is important to have that feature be subservient to the main home. With that, I can take any questions about the staff report.
Thank you, Sarah, for that very thorough report and good photographs too. So does the board have any questions or comments for staff? Any comment?
I do.
Okay, Member Hanson.
I have a question with regard to. Let's see, going back. Since our last meeting, I think, we've established that the criteria for class 1 and 2 are different. So should the staff report not look at those separately? If it's not eligible for a class 1, it's possible it could be eligible for a class 2. Without taking up the word exceptional for significance and also the word integrity. So that was one question. And a second question I have was, with regard to, which I don't think is in the staff report, if we could maybe do that in the future. This was given us a 4 rating in the survey.
It was, there wasn't a rating, it was on the class 3.
Okay, in class 3 list,
Mhm,
sorry.
mhm.
So, I was just wondering if. I don't know, I guess I would like to maybe know why it was on the class 3 list. And I think I asked you that at the site, but also, was this area at all looked at in the survey as a potential historic district? Because, while we're looking at it now individually, is there any potential district in that neighborhood?
So in terms of I'll start with the first question related to the findings. I know that traditionally we've always assessed these projects with the criteria for exceptional quality. I don't think we've ever pulled the two apart and said we're reviewing it for either class 1 or class 2. We've used the same set. So that is something that we can discuss to see if we need to separate those in the future. But I know in the past that we've always handled them, with the Pratt Plus One, integrity and criteria findings. In terms of the description for, this property as it was listed on the Class 3 site. So the Class 3 site list does have descriptions for certain properties as they did the inventory. I think I had mentioned before, the Class 3 inventory was compiled from a consultant who drove around the city and did their visual analysis of the properties from the street. And they compiled a list for us, which is available publicly for 1041 Twin Palms. The information that we have is its construction date of 1957. The description we have is contributor to Twin Palms Estates, and we don't have any more description other than that. And so that leads us to believe that it was added to the Class 3 site because it was within the Twin Palms Estates subdivision. Going forward with the last question about analysis of historic districts. There were groups of areas identified for potential historic districts, and we have that list on our website as well. Twin Palms Estates was identified as a potential historic district. In terms of the criteria and going forward with that application, it was more of a similar to our Class 3 site, an eligible area, but there wasn't anything that was pursued after that.
I'm just thinking of making a CEQA finding. Wouldn't the CEQA finding have to be based on the district? If it's a potential building in a district versus looking at it individually.
I think it certainly would, if it were classified as a district. At that point, we would have to say, yes, there is potential impact, because we have language that says there's various areas of the city that are potential historic districts. I think it's not as strong under CEQA, unless those are actually designated.
Okay, maybe, here's what I'm thinking, because maybe let me take a step back, because I know we're anxiously awaiting. I'm actually, maybe what I'm talking about is a little bit of two different issues, and maybe we can discuss the CEQA implications with a historic district. Because I know CEQA doesn't say that it has to be designated, just that it's been identified. But having said all that, I think even if this was, I would say this would be a non-contributor to a district in its current state. And for me, the plans that we saw for the alterations will actually improve the property and its integrity and be, anyway. So let me just say that maybe we can leave that for another discussion separately. So I'm in favor of, what is our supporting
Yeah.
the staff recommendation.
Yeah. So, other questions, Vice Chair, Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, elaborating a little further on Member Hanson's comments regarding the district. I know some years back, there was a pretty generated document about potential districts. I remember seeing it, and it called out what they felt were contributors to those districts. So I'm just asking if you perhaps know what percentage of the homes in Twin Palms were identified at that time as being possible contributors. Because if it's a low number, then it's probably not much hope for that at this time. Knowing Twin Palms and living close to there, I know they have a very strong membership organization. The chair is very active. And then Chris Menrad, our good friend, is a resident there. So I think if they were serious about becoming a district, they would have made some headway on it perhaps by now. So that's why I'm asking if there's a number of, I don't know how many homes are in that district, maybe close to 100 perhaps, maybe 70 something. So if there's a number that says how many were possible contributors, that might be a helpful thing for us to know, just in general. figure.
Yeah, in terms of the resolution language for districts, we need to have 50% or more, to agree to a district designation application. And then we would go through and individually evaluate the district boundaries to see who's contributing and not contributing. The report that you're referencing, they did go through, and kind of identify the different addresses within, a specific boundary. The analysis of how they determine contributing and non-contributing doesn't go into very much detail. So again, I think it's based off of the strive by, review, just trying to see if the form is there and that kind of thing. So we would have to do a detailed analysis of contributing. In this instance, this came before us as a single property, and so we did that evaluation based on the criteria for this particular property, and staff found that it would be non-contributing. It wouldn't rise to the level of a class 1 or 2 site, as it's outlined in our, ordinance. But yeah, I mean, the information is there. There's always a process for district designation if they're able to garner up the support and bring that application before the city, and then it would go through a typical designation process as outlined.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair? One question.
Yes.
What is this survey you're discussing?
The survey is part of an appendix as part of the contact statements. So the
Contact statements of what?
contact statements for the history of Palm Springs. So we have a series of contact statements that were created as part of the survey. And then as part of that survey, there was an appendix that identified eligible properties, eligible districts.
Shouldn't that be always considered when these evaluations occur?
Yes,
And should be, we're responding to member Vice Chair Nelson's memory, but shouldn't it be in the report?
yes.
Yeah, because I didn't even know of any existence of this appendix. I haven't read it in a while, but
Right, right.
definitely that should be in there, because it jumps beyond the issue of, well, they just have this vague idea of Twin Palms being a district, but they have no list of contributors. Well, they do apparently, potential districts, contributors and non-distributors, so that is a big deal.
Yeah, we only went as far as referencing the contact statement itself and didn't go drill down into the appendices, but you're correct.
Drilling down is worthwhile in most of these cases of this potential historic district.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, one more thing.
Yeah.
So, it is worth noting to the south of the neighborhood that Twin Palms has three class 1 sites. So that's quite a lot for such a small neighborhood. And I think I forgot what else I can mention at the time, but
Notable neighborhood, certainly.
One more question.
Yes, yes, Pete.
In our list of potential to-do items for this list here, do we include historic districts as a potential for the city to get involved in? Because apparently there's 2 that we are allowed to submit for consideration.
For the
Are you
work,
referring for the
work plan.
Yeah, the work plan.
I think traditionally we've only looked at individual landmarks, but that's something we can discuss during the work plan session.
Okay, because I'd like to consider that.
Very good. Okay, any other questions or comments on this project? Okay, well, I'm certainly supportive of taking no action and allowing the process of the proposed major alterations. So if there's no other discussion, could we have a motion, please?
I have just another question.
Oh, another question, that's
So
fine.
if the applicant wanted to speak, they should have done so under the public comment section, is that right? Because this is not a public hearing, so they don't have an opportunity to speak, or how does that work?
It's really the pleasure of the board. If the board wishes to allow the applicant to speak now, if they wish to, we would open it up to the board to allow that.
Does anybody want to hear, or do you?
Sure, would you like to speak? We welcome that.
Sure, sorry. Do you have the design? Like up front? We could put it up.
On the PowerPoint, maybe?
you can PowerPoint if you want.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, then, while it's coming up, thank you, Madam Chair, thank you, council. My name is Steve, my name is Steve Paline, I'm the architect on the project. I live at 2204 South Caliente Drive in Palm Springs. So the owners had approached me to look at converting their existing garage, which was a converted carport, to an ADU. And so when looking at the building and the architectural significance of the existing structure, we wanted to be really careful to not impact, to have as minimal impact to the facade of the building as it addresses the street as we could. So basically, we're trying to maintain the existing building outline. We lost it. I'm gonna pull it up here. And even though we're losing the garage door, we're basically going to essentially fabricate a faux garage door, so it looks from the street as if it's still has the same elements. They wanted to have additional clerestory windows in the back to help provide more light into the ADU. So what we decided, we looked at a couple options for different roof profiles. But for me, this one was the most clean in terms of what it looks like from the street. And really, as you're walking down the street, you probably won't even notice that the roof is climbing to the back of the property. We also located all of the utilities to the shorter side edge of the building so that roof plane in the main structure will be completely clean. White foam, so it won't sort of impact, you won't see all the utilities kind of poking up over that roof. So that's really our goal, and to try and, be as respectful as possible. The other thing we have proposed, we are gonna remove the existing block wall in front, and replace it with a more period style, post and tecton panel, fence, which I think I showed you guys examples of that at the property nearby. And it will open a larger chunk of the facade up to the street as it was in the original day. So hopefully, I think we're trying to be as respectful and as possible regarding the historical significance of the building, and trying to do what we can to make it even better. So thank you.
Yeah, yes.
I have a question for the applicant. Was the historic color analysis ever considered on this particular resident?
We don't, not that I know of, I couldn't find any historical color, other than, what was there existing.
Yeah, there's an Alexander Tudor gown that is still very, very original from the front, and the color palette is quite different. Yeah, and kind of a, for lack of a better word, kind of a beige olive color. So I was just curious about that. And then I do have some other comments, but they're not for you, so
Okay.
I'll pause on that.
Okay,
Great.
does anyone have any questions? The architect, any? together?
Sure, but this says the house frontage is 50 feet would be 100 feet, right? 20 by 100
The lot size?
under house frontage. It's not that important really, but I saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
good with numbers over
Hey,
here.
thank you very much.
That's good. Okay, anything else?
Um,
Okay, Vice Chair Nelson.
So
you
the
have a
question is, yeah, that block, all along the fence side. In recent years, within the last 5 years, but there are two other properties that do alterations to the front facade. And I don't remember those ever going before the HSPB. So if this one is a class 3, it would seem like those are class 3s as well. Unless they specifically called out this one or a few on that block, but it doesn't make sense to me if they were looking at it as one from the state of the district, why they would just cherry pick certain one for no obvious standout reason.
Mhm.
So because there's one few doors down that converted the carport into a dwelling unit, and there's a clerestory window at the top that's made to look like it's been there forever. And then there's one further to the east where they put in all new block walls and corten steel planters, and those never came before HSPB, and I don't know if they ever went to staff for review.
I guess, I would have to work off of knowing what the address is, but if they, were listed as a class 3 and they met the criteria for a major alteration, our ordinance says that it should be reviewed by HSPB. So I would have to look back and see what these addresses are, if they were listed on class 3, and then see if they triggered the major review, definition. In terms of the if they were not identified on class 3 and they were class 4 site and they were a major alteration, the ordinance does allow for HPO review of those applications. So I guess first step would be to see if they were identified as a class 3 site and then understand if they triggered the major definition. I know that the historic preservation ordinance also was redone in 2019. And so it's very possible that at that time, it wasn't a requirement for major alterations to come before HSPB. I believe that was actually a change. So it's possible that that wasn't languished in the ordinance for that review. I don't have a specific answer, but those are my comments related to that. If you need me to look that up, I can certainly look that up.
Thank you.
Okay,
The owner would like to say a few words as well.
thank you. Super, well,
Thank you. Thank you very much for considering our proposal. And I just want you to know that when I sought to buy a mid-century modern house, I grew up in Redondo Beach, California. And I lived in New York and I bought it in 2008. And I searched for 2 years to find a house in the Twin Palms neighborhood. This is the one I could afford. So I bought it at that time, and to your question about the color, I do believe it was yellow.
Okay.
Because there is where they did the addition, there's an exterior wall still on the inside and it's yellow. So that's my guess on the color.
Did you ever consider taking it back?
Not that color. It's a very, it's not even a nice mustard. It's sort of like a pale yellow color that's, I don't know, daffodil, maybe. So it seems not in keeping with the other colors in the neighborhood, but, so Mike, my whole approach to this house has been to try to restore some of the things that have been taken away from it. And that wall is horrible. And I'm so glad Steve told me it's really not appropriate, because I always wanted to go back to that sort of tectum looking fence as well. And I think it provides more privacy actually than that big tall wall that kind of is very imposing. So, in preparing to retire and everything, we put solar on the house and did a whole new roof 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2021. And so, we think having an ADU with the ability to maybe get some rental income if we needed to and provide, some lower cost housing for people would be appropriate as well. So that's kind of my thinking, but my primary goal is for that house to be improved and restored somewhat to
Yeah.
the way it was before, without doing any, horrible thing to it, like turning the back off or something. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, when my husband feels the same.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you for
thank you very
sharing
much.
that with us.
Mhm.
It's very nice.
Okay, thanks.
Congratulations.
All right.
You have a nice house.
Thank you.
So any other comments, questions, discussion about this project? And seeing no, Vice Chair
Yeah,
Nelson? Yes,
one more question for the applicant. I apologize if it's in here somewhere, but can you clarify what the material is on the front of the bar garage, 80, the material?
It will be stucco.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this pattern that you have here with the little rectangle and the line, is that painted?
Oh, that would be wood. The
Okay.
door would be wood, paneled. Yeah, it would be a
Okay.
paneled front, but the outside edges of the
Okay,
ADU.
so that's
would be
tied,
stucco.
tied into the foundation then?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
good. Okay, any other further comments? Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Um,
to take no action.
I would so move that, we approve request by Deborah Blackhead, represented by Pete Boland, for approval of a major alteration to a class 3 site at 1041 East Twin Palm Drive.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Nelson. Do we have a second?
Conflict.
Okay, second by Mr. Rosenau. So any other further discussion about the project? So seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes 7-0. So congratulations and thank you for coming and doing a good job. With us. Thank you very much. So let us proceed to agenda discussion item 5A, and this is the annual work plan. And we have a sheet, a memo outlining some background information and next steps that Sarah has prepared for us to work from. So may I turn the discussion over to Sarah to lead us through the memo?
So staff reviewed the discussion that happened on September 5th regarding the work plan. There was a lot of information on there, and we took back that HSPD wanted staff to go ahead and part that down and narrow it down to certain actionable items. And so that is the page that is in your packet there. We have narrowed it down to 4 topics of interest that boil to the top. And with the start of the new year, we would like to figure out what the 2 priorities are for HSPD within that list, so that we can develop it more into a comprehensive plan to pursue for 2024. So we can take the time to look at those topics to make sure that they have captured everything that was discussed at that meeting. Of course, there was a desire to reassess goals. And so that's kind of what this time for discussion is about. I wanted to confirm the 4 topics, figure out the priorities. And once those have been established, I would like to ask HSPD to either determine their top 2 here, or they can send it to me as an email. However you'd like to proceed with that, and I will compile that information. On top of that, I am requesting everyone to provide measurable goals and outcomes with that decision, so that we can develop something that we can, measure at the end. And the last point there was to ask the committee members if they are able or willing to serve as a subcommittee to help advance those goals. So there are a lot of things there, but we can kind of talk through those points, and then I can compile that information and provide it with a more clear work.
Mhm. Thank you, Sarah. Would you all be interested in just kind of going around the room? And kind of saying your top two, and we could start with member Hanson.
Okay. Yeah, I think for the most part, this expresses what we had discussed at the September meeting. I think for me, you know, the creation of an online database is of course an excellent idea, but is a massive undertaking and a long-term undertaking. I'm not sure if it fits really into what we would do. I think it's something really that staff would take on and probably maybe have some subcommittee or a person who serves on that. I speak from knowledge of working for the city of Los Angeles and working on a book on the topic of online databases and heritage inventories. So I mean, I think it's worthy. I guess for me, I'm not sure I would vote for that on this particular list, but I don't want it to mean that diminishes how important it is in any way, shape, or form. But it's also a huge financial investment.
Is that something that a grant application could be?
It wouldn't even begin to touch on how much it would cost,
Really?
quite frankly.
Yeah.
You know, it might be worth doing it sort of as a feasibility study. The one thing that I can say, and I mentioned it to Sarah, you know, the state is starting to use what's called the Arches software, and the city of Los Angeles uses Arches, San Francisco's using it. Other cities in the US, but of course, we're more interested. So I think, you know, with the state using it, it seems like that would be an obvious direction to go, to have something that's gonna be compatible with a state inventory, at a local city level. It is open source software, so it's available free, but that doesn't mean there isn't a matter of customizing it and compatibility with its existing systems that the city has, which is also huge. You know, and so if you're having to convert data, and it's a lot of time and a lot of money. So I think it might be something that the city should pursue, but maybe outside of what we would want to do, other than supporting the concept and maybe working with staff to maybe figure out ideas of how to get it done.
Could I ask a question about that?
Yes.
It says of locally designated historic resources, isn't that just a list that already exists? I mean, what is?
Well, you could make it that simple if you want to, but I think, you know, the whole idea with, you know, just putting a list online is like, so what, you know? I mean,
Well, I don't understand technically, what is this?
I think the idea
Provided.
is to get, you know, an interactive database that would include, you know, mapping capabilities, where something's located, a photograph, would include all the information that's in a
Historical.
survey, who the
Historical.
architect is,
That
and
makes
You know,
so something that,
description.
yeah, and that a description, you know, whatever you have in an existing survey, so that this is all available to the public over time and can even be added to, expanded. But you
Yeah.
can also, Arches has the capability of even incorporating the citywide historic context statement into it, so that you understand what context and themes properties are actually designated under, not just this is designated and its number, whatever.
Right,
So
okay,
it's-
that makes sense,
yeah.
thank you.
So for me, sorry, I'm not gonna talk too much. I think for me, definitely the number two, training opportunities. And I think for me, it's about, two things, really, meeting the certified local government requirement for training annually, and it's actually needs to be reported in the report. But annual CLG report, but I also think that, we should focus on training that helps us all do our jobs better. And I think even the last couple of meetings and Peter's, excellent questions about the context statement and the last survey. And I think we all need to understand what the context statement is, how it's used, why they even did one. The survey findings, because all of that information was put into place to help evaluate properties. So with our better understanding of what those documents are and how they are used to actually evaluate properties for significance, not just them individually, but as potential districts, and also comparative analysis, sort of compared to what. So that was really my thought, but I think at the same time, anybody, obviously the public might be interested, but certainly, consultants, and other people that are working with developing these reports and putting them together could, I think, benefit from that too. So that was my idea on that. And then, of course, number one, going ahead and doing what we've done in previous years and putting together a list, but maybe, as Peter suggested, maybe even thinking about potential districts, which will cost a lot more money because the city pays for it. So district is a lot more expensive to nominate than an individual property. But also, as we said last time, maybe trying to expand the context and themes, which is why we need to know our context statement, that we're nominating properties or recommending them to be nominated under, so we get a really good representation of all of the types of context and themes and property types that are represented in Palm Springs and represented in the survey, so that these sort of two things can kind of go together. And I do think, that we should hopefully would have some kind of a workshopping of that, rather than just saying, here's 10, what order you want them in. Maybe we can have some more meaningful discussion about what those are. Because when I came on the board, first of all, I didn't even know what the properties were that I was voting on, because I was relatively new to Palm Springs. And of course, those of you who have lived here for a while were really familiar, but it was a lot of background information. It's almost like it would be nice to have a short presentation. So it's like, what should we consider this one? What are the factors that you're thinking about to consider these properties for nomination? Are they endangered or, Anyway, so 1 and 2 would be my recommendations. I think obviously number 3 is important, but I don't know if it needs to be an entire goal for a year. And I think you would address that in the last meeting too about, and it was in the minutes. And then 4, certainly keeping that on the table, but maybe putting that something more that's in the city's purview to think about. I mean, it would have to be in a budget consideration. It's a lot more, at least in my head. Maybe in your guys' head, it's just a list that's online, but don't we already have an online list? Yeah.
We have a PDF, yeah.
Yeah, a PDF, so. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my thoughts, 1 and 2.
Very good. Excellent. Jade?
Okay, are you ready? So, we were charged with selecting 2 of the 4 topics. And then establishing goals and outcomes, and then determining if we were able to participate in the subcommittee. So my 2 of the 4 were number 2, create training opportunities for the board, potential applicants, and members of the public. Topics that include contact statements, application of criteria, and what it means to be a CLG. And number 3, provide resources and explore updates to the ordinance language to address upkeep and maintenance of historic property. And 3 would be my priority, and 2 would be my second priority. If you read the minutes of the last, say, 6 to 8 meetings, every single meeting, I bring up maintenance. And it is such a huge issue. Just the other day, I was at Topos Plaza and walking around, the grounds are a wreck. The irrigation is broken, there are baby palm trees coming up everywhere, there are dead plants. And it's really a disgrace to the building. And this is one of several examples of historic sites around town where the landscape has been allowed to just go to pot. In fact, a lot of the landscape all throughout the city, it's just embarrassing. Smoke Tree Village, where Chipotle and Johnson's is, complete embarrassment. So, this comes back to how important it is, because Class 1 historic sites, especially those that are public buildings like Bank of America and Taco Plaza, should be a point of pride in our community. Yeah, we fought so hard to save these buildings, and the building itself has been restored, but how about the purpose here? How about the surroundings and
Mhm.
the way the parking lot looks and the, the trees and the plants and everything else? It's just, it's not right. It doesn't look good. It doesn't speak well to, historic preservation in general, because people judge things based on first appearance and immediately create a judgment, regardless of what's been going on with the building. So I'm a big proponent of finding a way to add language to the ordinance that hold Class 1 and Class 2 owners, even Class 3 owners, responsible for the upkeep and maintenance and the appearance of their homes and or public buildings. Something missing from this list, and if you go back to the very first line, it talks about community education and outreach. And this is supposed to be an idea or a work plan for the upcoming year. There's no mention of preservation matters. And that is our huge community education outreach thing that we've been doing for 10 years. And I know we discussed in a prior meeting that that would be done in the spring of 25.
Mhm.
But we have to plan for it and work on it during the year 2024, or it won't happen. And that usually takes about 9 months to do that event properly. So it would have to begin
Mhm.
like late spring of 24 to, I don't know if Jack would initiate that or if we would initiate it, but there has been concern in the community, especially among the preservation organization, about, oh, why isn't it happening again in 24? Why is it not happening until 2025? And they have some people or organizations have expressed interest in how they can help. Like, what can we do to relieve the burden on the city and to make it more fun for the HFPD. And then one last thing, Tom Dole, who is a graphic designer and very involved with the brand identity for Destination PFP. He's written many books. He's worked on brochures and event journal for Modern Week and home tours, and he's the co-author of Glamour Road, which is an incredible book about vintage automobiles and so forth. He has come up with this concept or idea to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Sunrise Park. Or the 50th anniversary, rather, my apologies. It was completed in 1973. And he's done all kinds of research and has made a presentation to City Council. And he made a small presentation to a group of people in the community, at which presentation I suggested that he speak with the city about looking into making that whole Sunrise Park site some kind of a historic cultural designated site. Because it was the old polo ground field. And then you have the multitude of buildings by different architects, Lapham, Westbrook, Cody. You have the library, you have the high school campus nearby, you have the skate park, the swimming center. So it really could be this incredible hub for the community. And so he wants to come up with this program to bring attention to Sunrise Park. And I thought one way that the city or the various boards and commissions could help him was to contribute in our way. So the history behind that site is pretty amazing. And it's not just one building, it's many buildings and the land. So that would be something I would think should be on a work program. Because it's something that benefits the entire city. And it's something that city staff will be working on, and city council is aware of. And sustainability commission could be involved, public art commission could be involved, we could be involved.
Mhm.
So those are my thoughts.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Can I
Very
ask
good.
questions of the,
Yes, sure, go ahead, Pete, ask. And
so how would the HSP be involved with Tom Dole's program? Let's see, I know what he wants. But how would we be involved? What would we do to help?
So, this women's center is 50 years old. And the library is a significant, Cody building, historic, even though it doesn't have a designation. So, the idea is that we would all work together to, do what we could to realize this vision to, emphasize the importance of Sunrise Park and its building to the community, whether it be historic, cultural, social. And so I think it's a way for the board to create something, that has, obvious public benefit for the community. Rather than just doing, the annual symposium every year, maybe this takes the place of that. Tom needs all the help he can get because, basically they built the park and then they ignored it. So there has not been, any kind of, financial upkeep that a normal park of that size would get. There's no endowment, there's no nothing. Everything has just been kind of crumbling and falling apart. And so he's looking to rebrand it, bring it back to life. And I'm sure there's a way that the HSBB could be involved. I think it would be, part of our mission to, participate in community education and outreach. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so moving along, now, in looking at this, the memo. I see our mission, our goals or objectives is twofold. It's providing the community education and informing people about historic preservation. That's what we have to do. That's number one. And then number two is we consider sites and make recommendations, to city council. So those are our two jobs that we do all the time in everything that we do. So those are given to me, that's the umbrella. And then under the umbrella are the specific kind of topic projects. So the symposium, would be there under community education and whatever else that we might do in community education. So I was reading this as the 4 items below are kind of under the umbrella of education and our site recommendations, because that's what we do every week or month or every day. So of the 4 topics under, they're all important and we all know that, and I wish we had a larger staff and a bigger department and had more to do, help us, but we don't. So I would go with number 1 and number 2 as my top 2. Personally, that's how I think it's most beneficial to what I see are goals and outcomes would be. So, but they're all important. So I vote for the first 2. I'll turn it over to you.
As a newbie here, I'm sort of interested in what all of you with more
Yeah.
experience are throwing out here. And so I'm intrigued with the idea of just both Jade and Janet, that more further training would
Mhm.
be incredibly valuable to me. And I expect others that are new here, Janet addressed that. So that would be my top.
Mhm.
But the community outreach, and I love what Jade was talking about that park, the Sunrise Park, the
Mhm.
specific project.
Mhm.
I use the park all the time. And it's a great asset, and I'm intrigued with the idea of, instead of the preservation matters this year, maybe focusing a little bit over there. Cause I feel like I've talked to other people in the gap of not doing preservation, people are like, why not, why not? There's an audience that you've all created, including me,
Yeah, I mean, the community has high
they
expectations,
do, and they're
really
eager.
high, and they're eager, so, we've achieved great success.
You're a hard act to follow.
I know, so there's just great expectations, that's for sure.
So that's my perspective on it, is, like I said, as a newbie, I'm eager for training, but those are my observations.
Oh, hi. I'd rather talk to Jade a moment about the issue of upkeep and maintenance. Is there a precedent in other cities, other ordinances anywhere that address maintenance? I'm just totally unfamiliar with that, and if there are, that's important, because
Yeah.
I don't know how we would implement that.
How it would be enforced.
I mean, would you just say, you guys are. I mean, what would be the criteria, that a certain number of plants are dead, or this looks crummy, or I mean, I don't understand. How you could, what?
I think what you would have to do if you wanted to pursue this would be to, and of course Sarah needs more work. You guys need a preservation intern. This is perfect for a preservation intern or a subcommittee, but research. Maintenance and, in other ordinances all throughout California.
There are,
Yes.
just, and just give you with one example of what the criteria might be.
Los Angeles has a maintenance criteria.
You,
Mhm,
But just for designated properties.
mhm.
Huh, okay, good.
But I think it would be worth, that would be, for me, that would be how I would start, would be doing a survey of other ordinances, and probably OHP can help in that, because
Yeah.
if you're a certified local government, your ordinance would be reviewed and ultimately approved by OHP, Office of Historic Preservation, so, but I don't know, maybe it could be sort of a halfway thing on the list where, maybe somebody wants to just volunteer as a first step. And that's one of the things I think I said last year too, is some of these things maybe can be phased. Where, we realize people's time limitations, staff time limitations, and you sort of take on what you can. Because an ordinance change might take a while as well. The process that it would need to go through, but it's certainly a really good starting point would be researching ordinances, and it's a big task for an intern.
I agree with that. So, number two, to me, doesn't even seem to be something we should be voting on, isn't that part of the reason that the HSBB exists? I mean, I don't think I should have to vote on, oh yeah, I wanna have great opportunities, well, yeah, don't we all? I mean, it's kind of given to me, so I would say 1 and 3, with 2 being, of course, you have to do that. Cause I would be glad to be in the subcommittee regarding upkeep and maintenance, because there's a lot. There's so many historic resources that go down the toilet because people just neglect them, demolition by neglect. And that's not right, if there's a way that it could be enforced in a legal way. In the public input part, we talked about other things and topics as related to cultural, and not just architecture, right? You brought it up, Janet. And I think that's important too, because there's certainly properties here that wouldn't necessarily be architecturally significant, but they have. I know Mayor Garner was searching for properties in her district that could be designated, and all I thought about was architecture. But to her, there are more important things, and like a church was in her district or something. I mean, I think we should think about those things. So in the gay community, maybe on arenas or something. I mean, there's all kinds of different themes other than architecture.
And there are some in the context statement,
Ah,
which is another reason for us all to be really
To be
familiar and
informed.
explore. That doesn't mean they got everything, because as we know, ethnic cultural resources are, they're not obvious from the street.
right.
And if you're doing a survey that, depending on the methodology, and you don't do a lot of outreach to find those places as part of a survey, that would be, my suggestion is, this is where we would maybe start that process so we can get
I
at
agree.
some of those resources and make people understand that Palm Springs is
Right,
so much focus on architecture, understandably. But
Yeah, well, the mayor was saying that she didn't think there were any historic sites in her district, the whole district,
Mhm,
and that doesn't seem right.
mhm.
So, anyway, those are my thoughts.
And that would absolutely be something we could get certified local government grant money
and-
for too.
One example, were the tie downs for the airplanes for World War II.
Mhm,
There's one at St. Teresa's
that's
School.
right. I think somebody had mentioned
That
that.
on the
yeah.
playground,
Mhm.
St. Teresa, and then there's, the kind of monument on the corner, but that would be an example of
Right.
another,
Not architecture per se.
right? Mhm. So, yeah, and like the cabin, the old historic cabin that is up over there, almost where Chocolates is. There's only the fireplace standing. I forget the name of the cabin.
AB Field.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just it's a site.
And I think there's probably houses of important people in Palm Springs as well.
That's always been a tricky one though, because if they use it as second homes and if they didn't, do something significant there, but isn't that part of it?
Yeah, well, that would be part of the criteria though,
Right.
they would wanna be somewhere where they lived in that home during whatever they did that was important and influential, so yeah, that would be part of it.
I guess my preference at this point is cultural.
Yeah,
Um,
good.
Well, they could be of cultural significance,
True
this
enough.
is my point.
Good point.
To respond to, Ms. Maluki's, comment to me about, maintenance. In the past, when we had former HBO Lion, Ken Lion, he would always say, if you see an issue at a public Class 1 site, go online and go to code
Compliance.
enforcement and report it that way.
Mhm.
But it didn't always work, because I would do that for some things, and if it wasn't related to the building itself, they would ignore it. So, I know in the past, a long time ago, in the first 5 years of the HSPD, they would go out in the field a lot, and they would do a lot of things, they would just go out, they would say, okay, we're gonna do this, and you're gonna take this block, and you'll take that block, and you'll take that block. So, what if, we came up with a list of all of our public Class 1 sites, that are public buildings, whether they're banks or chocolate plaza, or whatever they are. And say, okay, you take these 5, you take these 5, you take those 5, and walk around the building and make a list of all the things that look like they're wrong. If it's, I don't know, something falling down, or the paint is peeling, or the foundation is cracked, or the sidewalk is uneven, or because it's all important. It's very crucial to how the public, experiences and judges the building, then it always looks back on us. Because people come up to us and say, what's going on with that building? Why is that like that? And at the end of the day, they're holding all of us accountable for how these properties look. So I would love to see create something like that, where we each go out in the field and we write down something about, these 5 or these 10 properties. And then maybe someday we could have an app like the water agency had. I know that's a big dream, but you would go on this app and you would report when you saw a water leak. And it would go to them and they would send someone out and fix it. So it could be like a similar thing where it comes back to maybe Sarah. And then Sarah would tell someone, in code enforcement or planning, and then they would go out. So it's a real critical, important issue.
Well, I agree with that, but I personally would not wanna go out and inspect properties and report that personally. So, I don't wanna be on that subcommittee. And I'm not sure, I don't know, it just seems a little. I don't know, a little too much to me.
Police.
Oh, yeah, a little bit too, like, I'm not code enforcement and I don't wanna assume that role. And I'm not sure that's in our ordinance, if that's anything like that is in our purview to be doing that, and I don't think the public holds us personally responsible. I think if they're gonna blame anybody, unfortunately, it's gonna be the city, but I don't think us as individuals are blamed for somebody not maintaining their property. And this is a really, really, really difficult topic, and this is not the only city, it's a topic. It's a huge topic in every city, and code enforcement in every city has a lot of health and safety violation issues to deal with versus, the landscaping's kind of overgrown. But just sort of reality, I guess.
So Jeffrey, what are yours?
Just a point here, member Bachman, you were number 2 and
I think it was the one that
And Sunrise Park,
it's as an alternative to the.
yeah.
oh, okay, thank you. And just one point of clarification for staff. If memory serves at some discussion or other, I believe, Sarah was asked about the backlog of applications for historic sites, and my sense was that there is a fairly large backlog. Is that correct, or am I misrepresenting it?
For designation.
Yes.
So we have caught up with some of the backlog that was from a year ago, but of course, within that year, we have new applications that are in. And the review process for those applications, typically staff will take in a draft and provide comments. Because of catching up with the old backlog, we're now backlogged in doing that portion of the review. So yes, there are, I would say, 4 applications that we're reviewing to try and get comments out.
Mhm.
So, the request at that time was we have an ample amount of designation applications coming in from our community. And so when we are, as a group looking for historic designating historic sites on a city initiated project, we want to be a little bit more cognizant of what we're trying to put and achieve into our inventory and part that number down to something that can be reasonable. I think in the suggestion here is 2 city initiated projects per year, but you know, it's after it's been vetted to understand what we're putting forward. So yeah, I think I appreciate you being cognizant of that fact and us trying to manage the city initiated applications as well as the applications that are coming forward from the public.
So just to address your question then about this, in terms of number 1, I would agree with Chair Huff that that's something we're doing, and we are going to be doing this, and to add city designated applications to this might tip the scale in the wrong way there. If we can get through the ones that are initiated by applicants, maybe we're doing very good. And sitting here listening to the other comments, I actually changed my criteria here. So thank you all very much for that. But I would say number 2 would be on my list. And I'm going to make a plea that we consider number 4. Member Hanson's comments are absolutely spot on in terms of thinking about an ultimate goal, but I believe that that is such an enormous undertaking that we would be better served to think of it in a phased plan and start with something that is manageable, but will provide the information that either any one of us or the constituents of Palm Springs can find at least somewhat useful, if not, completely a sort of Library of Congress database that is so interactive, you need to wear a virtual headset. At any rate, so number 4 would be my choice.
Can I just add to, all of the information is online already and accessible for anyone. It's just not searchable.
Well, and that would be, I think, maybe that's the first phase, is to somehow figure out a way to make it searchable. If it's not searchable, it's pretty useless.
Right, but the searchability has to do with what software you're gonna use or building it. Or so, I mean, I totally agree with you, and I didn't want to take it off the table either. I think it should be on the table. I'm just not sure that it's not a bigger issue than our work plan. I think the city should start working toward that goal.
Well, and I guess just to add to that, I think the work plan is eventually part of our kind of responsibilities as well, so just to kind of balance those. Or if there is a direction where we want to put more emphasis on building that database, then we can put our efforts towards that. I think all of these are desired projects, and we just want to understand what the priorities are, because I think at the end of the day, we want all of these things. But getting a little bit of direction on prioritizing this helps us as city staff to manage our time and understand where we want to put our resources towards, so. The database and trying to expand that is something that we are continually trying to work on, especially from the GIS standpoint, but getting more feedback from our board saying this is something that we need to continue to put more emphasis on gives us the ability to take that back and say we want to put our resources towards this project specifically. So,
You have a property profile database, correct? A GIS.
we don't have a
Oh.
GIS program right
Yeah.
now. We don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cause I was gonna say that's sometimes a good starting point, but yeah, so we're really starting from scratch.
Yes, we have a
Okay.
PDF file of our properties.
Okay.
The GIS layer, we are in communication with our IT department to try and get that up and going. And we, as staff, tried to prioritize that as an importance, but you know, sometimes we need additional support, saying this is absolutely necessary for our community, you know, just to get that project rolling faster.
Cause I'm thinking, you know, in a lot of cities, if they have a parcel profile database, at least the designation information can be tied to the parcel. And so you have a location and, you know, minimal information at least, but yeah, I guess we're really starting.
Well, doesn't the planning department in building and safety have a flag that if something is on the list, that it pops up when someone says, I want to demolish my house?
We're working on
Oh, really? I thought that existed now. So someone has to remember that it's something
look
is
it
on
up.
To
the.
go
that.
look
You
it
know,
up.
I have
Look it
to
up.
look them all up when they come through the department.
But
So
what
right
if it
now,
goes to the building and safety? That's not your department.
so, I mean, those all get filtered through us.
They do? So all this time someone's had to look them up?
Mhm.
Wow, I didn't know that. It's kind of pretty big.
Yeah, see, that's why doing a database right now for us, it's like, is a big, more giant priority. You know, and this is sort of a component of it, but the bigger picture of the universe has to be a little bit further along to put this component into effect.
I just have to say, I don't know if people realize what Member Hanson's experience is in this. And I don't know, maybe some, I mean, you mentioned it briefly when we were all introducing ourselves. How many years of experience do you have working with the city on all of these issues?
Which city?
City of Los Angeles.
Together?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Los Angeles 14,
And you dealt with all these survey issues and.
yeah,
setting up
we
databases
surveyed the whole
and-
city from
Right,
scratch.
context and.
Context statement.
She has so much experience that it's shocking.
Yeah,
And people, you know, whatever she said, we need to listen to. Because she's coming from experience, and I know it, 'cause I used to work with her. On the other side and doing some of the research and so forth, so. Just that's important, we all know that,
well, she's well trained.
and she's dealt,
It's
she's on the city
informed
staff side,
and
she knows all the,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah, the
issues.
city staff side.
we're lucky to have. Thank you.
I've also managed boards and
Yeah.
commissions
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
and been a
Staff.
curator, and been a curator.
and curated. That was way long time.
Well, when you're talking about the database, it's making me think of a collections management policy,
Yeah.
like, I mean, a system at the, like
Mhm.
ours at the museum. You know, it's our collection, you know, you go in there and say, I want a cowboy bronze, and, you know, it comes up, or I want a abstract, you know, the searchable, you know, there's all, you know, that system. I mean, I can't imagine doing work without that.
Yeah,
And as
exactly.
a job, and so it's just like that. Anyway, Eric.
Last but not least, and I missed the discussion back in September since I was on vacation, so I was kind of reading through it as we're all going through the main bullet points. My first one would be number one. I really feel strongly about the city initiated properties, and when I moved to Palm Springs, all I really knew about was a guy called Wexler, a guy called Cody, a guy called Williams, you know, the mid-century stuff. What has come through via the city initiated project were like the Airbnb stone houses, which I had no idea they existed. other stuff that have brought them to the attention of us as well as the public. One of the other, I think, aspects of city initiated should be more commercial stuff. I mean, we see a lot of homes, beautiful homes that go through and they get the tax break and everything like that once they get Mills Act. We did the Union Bank a couple of months ago, which the owner fought against it, and we're trying to help designate a building that he doesn't tear down the facades or whatnot. He had mentioned donating the facade somewhere else or whatnot, but so things like that, and we've had success in the past with the Town and Country Center getting it designated, working with the business owners to actually realize what they've got, the Tackwitz Plaza, for example. Things like that I think are really important, so keeping us focused on that because yeah, we'll see a bunch of Alexanders in the coming years and a bunch of big Spanish houses that are beautiful and the owner ones are kind of the icing on the cake. And then the other one I'd like to emphasize is number 3. I really think we do need to be strong with our maintenance. I don't, like Janice, I don't want to be a policeman out there patrolling the streets, but I get asked all the time, Eric, what's the HSPB doing about building 1, 2, or 3? And it's like, you can go online and report it, and there should be, people tag me in Facebook and say, hey, Eric, and it's like, we get into a wonderful discussion of 100 preservationists talking about a particular building, but there's nothing really happening that, emphasizes fines or penalties for the homeowner that, you look at some of these buildings that, the Town and Country Center, for example, which has a cyclone fence around, we have to watch and making sure the homeless don't really light a fire underneath it or whatever. Same with the Orchid Inn. So once they're designated, it's not enough. And I really feel strongly about the maintenance of that, so strengthening the ordinance language there.
I mean, it sounds like we have enough people in subcommittee, right? 3. I don't want to be on it. You want to be on it. Jade, so it's not a quorum, so we can do 3, right?
Can I suggest something? Cause I know you said, pick 2.
We have 3.
And we have 3. Is there, to Peter's point on 2, is that really a work plan item, or is that something we should just be doing as an ongoing
Right.
thing
Right.
that isn't a specific item? Training board members and, giving some guidance to the public and consultants doing nominations. Is there a way that we can say 1 and 3, but say we're going to do 2, but we're gonna do that as part of the responsibilities
Well, that's
of
what I
this
said.
board?
That
That's
was
what I
my
said.
vote. Yeah.
No, that's
Oh,
exactly,
okay.
yeah, no,
Good,
I'm
good.
repeating what
Well,
you
that's
said.
good that you do
I'm
that.
giving you credit for it. So I'm giving you full credit for it. So, so can we take that idea and say 1 and 3 as a work plan and 2 is just an ongoing responsibility? And I would be absolutely willing to take on 2. I know it's your survey and your city staff, but I would be happy to work with you on putting together some training to talk about the survey and historic context statements and what they mean. And because, the Palm Springs, quite honestly, used one of the consultants for Survey LA and used our methodology to do the survey. It was Historic Resources.
Yeah, sure.
So they used the methodology we developed for Survey LA to develop their context statements. So anyway, just because one of the things was, I know that's not a subcommittee, but I'd be happy to be a designee for helping put together training opportunities. Okay. And I don't know if we just do that once a year. And each year, maybe we figure out, what do we need to know more about this year to do our jobs better? But those are, to me, right now, is the city, the content statements, and how we look at the criteria.
And you're the expert.
One last question. Aren't surveys supposed to be updated every 5 years? But
No.
nobody really does that.
No.
right? So this is, what was the last one, 2016 with an update in, when was, the update was 2016?
I think it's 19.
2019.
Yeah, it's not that old.
2004.
Yeah,
Oh, so it's actually- it took that long?
no, didn't take them that
No,
long.
but I mean, when,
Oh, to do another one.
yeah, how long did it take for them to do this, the one that was certified in 4 years?
No, 1 year, wasn't it?
No, it was,
It
yeah,
was? Oh,
Yeah.
good.
it was done within 1 or 2 years.
And how did the fund, I mean, how did you get it funded?
Two?
We budgeted for it, yeah, the city budgeted for it.
Was there any pushback? I mean, shouldn't we just always do it? Why don't push for every 5 years? I mean. All they can say is no.
Well, every 5 years, I mean,
You think it's too often?
I just think it's such an effort to do a survey to begin with. You're basically never gonna stop.
Right.
But I know what you're saying, you know, it's like you put a mechanism in place as part of a budget to keep doing this, but you don't have to redo the whole survey in 5 years.
No,
You know,
you certainly
you could-
update.
You can update and add properties that are now of a certain age, you know, that have, or maybe explore contexts that hadn't been before, you know, that type of thing to supplement.
Yeah, I mean, anything like that, just so it's not, there was like, for years, it was, well, yeah, the survey was way back in 2004, and it's not even useful.
When I was in Redlands, the city said, well, we've already done a survey. I think the survey was 1982. And there was nothing past World War II. It's like,
Yeah.
gosh, we've already done a survey. It's like, you know, time is since then.
Yeah, we're better than that, thank God. Madam Chair,
Yes, sorry.
regarding number one of the issues we haven't touched on is, the city initiated designation expense. And that comes out of our budget. And because there has been such a large volume of designations submitted by
Mhm.
private individual, mostly coming from the Preservation Foundation. It seems unfair to me, almost as if, okay, so the city is focusing on its city-initiated designation, that the city is having to pay for. But yeah, everything that's coming in from the community is backlogged. Seems like it should be the other way around, because here we have people saying, here, I've done all the work, I've done all the research, I need you to expedite this for me, but we are expediting the city initiated thing that we are spending money on. That seems wrong to me, so I would love to see maybe only do one this city initiated property, especially because of the cost.
Mhm.
And then put the money towards something more useful, like Janet's suggestion of training or maintenance. And try to encourage more applications from the community. And that's part of community outreach is. I mean, it's not that hard to write a designation. There are enough of us here who have done it. That we could have a little workshop and we could invite, people from, we have the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, we have what? 50+ official neighborhoods in Palm Springs, so we can invite a representative from each neighborhood to sit in the audience and have this workshop on how to, nominate a building. And it could be extremely helpful. So that's my thought.
Okay, so, Sarah, do you have enough information?
I think so, and I can tell you where it's boiling down to, and then I'll compile this and then send it out and have you guys input it on it, but. So. In terms of. Number one, obviously, that one is one that everyone's interested in, but putting some guardrails on what we're looking at. Being more thoughtful about what we are selecting, if it has cultural significance, and I think we're trying to put more emphasis on the why it's being initiated by the city as opposed to kind of a rolling list, which I think is a great idea. And I think that would require actually a lot more time. Garnering information from the community is what I've heard. And also providing a presentation of some sort to say this is why. And I think that is a very thoughtful way for us to look at that, as well as put that information out to the community so it's accessible, so they understand why we're initiating that project. Because a lot of the pushback projects that we've had that were city initiated is because there wasn't that clear understanding and everyone felt like we were targeting them, which isn't the case. But I think if we have a lot of information, plus the support of the community, I think it will be a very positive experience for everyone. And it gives us the opportunity to really understand our inventory as we add resources to it. So I'll put a little bit of information together related to what that process could look like, and then get your input on how we get to that. And it could be one, could be two, it could be a whole year of figuring out what our one or two resources are. And I think putting a number on, like, we need to do 2 every year is really dangerous. And having meaningful ones being added in through a very extensive community outreach process is a lot more meaningful. So I'll put that together and bring it back to you and see if we have a plan of how we want to move that going forward. And then the other thing that came up kind of more regularly was maintenance language. I think it's because we're approached with that as a problem. Oftentimes, we don't have a great solution, and of course, the reasonings are we're limited with resources. We don't have a officer for just historic preservation projects. Most communities don't, and it does rely on the code enforcement, and it becomes a balancing act of what rises to a more important thing to enforce on. I think Janet's suggestion of starting that maintenance, like looking at it as a cohesive whole and seeing what kind of problems we're seeing, doing some research on what other communities have done to try and address that, and see what works for Palm Springs. And kind of putting all of the pieces together, doing case studies and looking at other ordinances, and seeing what our major problems are that we see. Going out to policing is kind of a dangerous one, because it puts us at risk as well as individuals, and that's not something that we are authorized to do. But creating language to help us have teeth in some of our language, I think is something we can look at. I do think that there is a little bit of a lack in that area. We don't have a lot of language talking about deferred maintenance. We actually refer back to the code for maintenance as a general for a citywide, and maybe having something a little bit targeted towards historic properties is something we can do some research on to see how it can help us in the language. And having that in the ordinance, having it in the resolution language is really helpful, just because it puts everyone in the know of what their responsibilities are. But again, let's look at other cities and see how we can approach that before we have some actions on the table. So I think there's a lot of information gathering we can do for that piece of it.
We all have experience in a lot of different cities here. Does anyone have experience with that kind of ordinance? I don't. Where I know a little bit of landscaping and like safety issues, but beyond that, where maintenance, general maintenance on historical properties, I have no idea of any community I've worked in that exists. I'm trying to look for a model that we might.
Well,
find
I'm thinking a
follow.
good place to start might be in Los Angeles. They have historic preservation overlay zones that are historic districts, and they have their own, ordinance. And they have a conference. Is it every other year? Gosh, I should know that, but a neighborhoods conference, and every single year maintenance is on the schedule, it's because it's a huge problem in the neighborhoods. So I guess my suggestion is maybe that would be a good place if somebody's gonna start looking. And I, actually talked to somebody, the person now who's managing the HPSE program, because a lot of those planners, they have, LA's so huge, there are planners for every historic preservation and overlay zone. It's a crazy program, where you have this huge amount of staff. But they have a lot of experience with at least neighborhood maintenance, maybe not, like I said, an individual landmark, but it might be a good place to start, because they've done so much research on it, just to get an idea of, what kind of things you've done. And, that code enforcement officers come and talk at these workshops, and anyway, it's just, it's a huge issue there.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, it really is
It is everywhere, and I've
But
not
it's a
seen
huge
it
concern
enforced.
of the community.
Yeah.
One of the biggest concerns of the community about
So it all comes through that community
Yes,
focus?
because
Do they
every-
have the
every-
power
this
to
is-
do?
Every historic district has their own board. So there's like 35 laws. Wow, yeah.
Well, and I guess I can speak from my previous experience in Aspen, I think it's always, maintenance is always an issue because sometimes you drill down to, okay, we have a complaint, but we don't know how to get a hold of the owners. And so there's lots of facets to that, and,
Yeah.
you know, you can send the letters and you don't get responses, you can send certified, you don't, you know, it's a really tricky one. And sometimes we get responses from the community saying we don't know how, like, we don't know the
Right.
resources, or we don't know how we deal with these historic windows, and so sometimes creating those resources for homeowners to have access to is another way to deal with maintenance, not necessarily always thinking about how do we reprimand somebody, but providing information for them so that they can educate themselves. You know, and I think that's something that we can also look at as part of this maintenance plan, if you will, a maintenance kind of idea where we're trying to provide information for our historic property homeowners. But also sending a message that there's a responsibility for maintaining and upkeeping your property. And what it means to have a plaque on your property, you know, I think
Yeah.
that we can look at it in different facets, but there's a lot of ways to look at maintenance as a whole, and I think looking at resources that we can provide, looking at strengthening language and messaging to the community, I think those are all things that can fall under that umbrella. So.
It's so subjective,
Mhm.
you know, you're not taking
Yeah.
care of your house, but you think it's fine. So that who's the judge is really, and who's the enforcement.
Definitions.
Yeah.
Question for, is there anything that, any code enforcement officers or any building inspectors go through that is training related to the public building that are historic site? Because that would be a great way if you have your code enforcement people and your building inspectors. Let's say a building inspector was a Catholic plaza and he noticed something that was affecting the historic integrity or one of the character defining features. If he was trained to recognize that, then he could kill two birds with one stone, do his inspection, and then also say, oh, this is something that, you know, damaging the historic integrity. So training from within rather than training from the outside. So maybe that's something that could be approached as well.
And I think, yeah, I mean, I think that training material can be developed as well, for internal and external. So if you see something, reporting it, that's still the way that we operate right now. We do get enforcement related, historic property related enforcement, reported, and we do have to follow up on that with our, you know, departments. And so, training material for all of us is something that could be part of that maintenance plan as well. So I think, the more we delve into it, there's lots of pieces, and I think focusing that on one or two objectives. And if the maintenance piece stays on every work plan and we develop different areas to develop each year, that's also something that we can look at, because there's just so many points, and it's very clear in this discussion that, you know, the more we talk about it, there's so many things we can do, but maybe starting the idea of developing a maintenance plan is where we start, and language and bringing all that material together, and then figuring out how we want to organize that. Just want to be cautious of being aware of our current ordinance language and seeing what we can and cannot do, because we also don't want to overstep our boundaries and create all these things that we do without having the backing of an ordinance language. So we just need to be careful with that, but putting it all, brainstorming it and then divvying it out, I think that's a great way to start it. And then the last thing, I think training opportunities came up multiple times, but this idea of ongoing training is our responsibility. I totally agree. I think what we need to do is decide what those are, to just, you know, we've always done our symposiums. If we have specific trainings that we want to do presentation wise, if we have a plan of that for each year so that we are very clear of what our objectives are, instead of this kind of overarching idea, we always do training, we always do educating, we always do community outreach, but just having one or two things that we say this year, we're gonna work on this, or this, maybe that's the way to approach that as an ongoing topic as well, being phased. So I think we only managed to knock out one, the resource database, is something that we are trying to pursue. And so it is on the city end. We'll come back with you on how we're doing on that, but there's a lot to be done in that regard, so. Again, with the staff time, I actually want to put a lot of focus on the database piece of it, but, we have other things that are coming up. I just wanna see how we manage our time and our priorities. So. In a nutshell, we are 1 and 3, with 2 being a rolling kind of let's determine what training opportunities we want.
So you'll bring this back and we'll adopt it officially?
Yeah, I will send it out as an email actually, and then get comments back, and then we can bring that to the next hearing that we have and adopt the work plan officially. And I'm gonna try and be a little bit more detailed on the document I'm going to send out with, I'm gonna make up the goals and objectives, like deliverables, and I want everyone to weigh in on if this seems like an achievable deliverable, and I was kind of assess that on my timeframe as well in my workload. And then
You're part of this too.
I am. So I'll do that, but I appreciate everyone's conversation. I think this is important, especially for me to understand where everyone's priorities are, so that I can shift and focus on that as well.
Very good.
Can I send you my suggestion for the training for 2024, please? Okay,
Thank you.
One last thing, so, maybe at the next meeting, we can agenda as, coming up with a list of what the board initiated possible site would be. And, I'm wondering if maybe we could be a little unconventional with it this time around, rather than just having the input from the government. We could also ask for staff recommendation, which I think has always been there, but maybe even ask the council. Because Peter brought up the great point about Grace Garner saying she didn't think there was anything in her district. So could that be something we could do, send the council a letter saying, are there any sites, historic, cultural sites in the city, public or private, that you think should make it to our list? And then we would select 2 from that list.
I think I think what I've gathered is that we want to step away from starting with the list, but actually starting with a process first. What I'm afraid of is if we reach out to people and say, hey, what do you think is important? We're gonna get a massive list and it's all gonna be conflicting, and we will kind of lose that idea of what our goal is, what do we want to focus on in terms of
establishing it more of a criteria.
yeah, so let's start back, and then there will be that opportunity to ask for those comments, but I want to make sure that we have guardrails for that, so we don't get everything, because I think that's where we have been, and it's been extremely difficult to try and, number and label, and then it just gets, we kind of lose our focus, I think, so let me create those guardrails first from what I've heard, on a process for getting that information, and then we can go from there.
Very good. Good. Thank you. And thanks for everybody's comments. Very useful and informative. So we've completed the agenda for today. And now we're gonna go into board comments and staff comments before we adjourn. And board member comments. Are there any comments from the board? I have just a couple. I wanted to know what the status is of the, the historic plaque markers for designated properties, because I'm getting asked, where's my plaque? So what's the status?
So the markers, I am actually getting help from our former HPO on some of that stuff. There are a lot of properties that don't have their markers right now. And so there is a list. If there's a specific request for specific property, you can send that to me. and
Okay.
Let them know where we're at.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah,
There's-
just because I know it's.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people who have a marker are now saying, oh, this marker is incorrect, and we don't, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of back and forth. with
Yeah,
that.
okay.
If you can
good.
send those.
Yeah, I
to
will,
me.
sure, good, good.
Mhm.
And then Janet, your book, is it out?
No, we're still in the editing process. It'll be out in 2024.
So tell everybody.
Oh, I think I mentioned slightly about it. It's a book with the Getty Conservation Institute, David Myers, who has been heading up their worldwide inventories studies. And out of that, the Arches software that I had mentioned previously was born. Starting with using it for archaeological sites, but now the Getty realized that all over the world, people are duplicating efforts to create heritage inventory systems. So they said, this is ridiculous. There's so much money being spent. They don't talk to each other. They're all independent. So anyway, that's why they developed Arches as open source software that's free to everybody. There's a website, arches.com. You can join the Arches community, get updates from them on what's going on. It's being used all over the world for government agencies and non-government agencies. And so the book is called Inventories and Surveys for Heritage Management, Lessons for the Digital Age. So it's all about, digital surveys and inventories for both collecting and accessing. And my part of the book is focusing on heritage surveys, or what we would call historic resources surveys, and how to plan for them, how to carry them out, how to get backing, how to actually do a survey, huge section on outreach and getting the public involved in it, and then publishing results. And then we have some case studies of a couple of projects that do intangible heritage and archaeology, and there's a section on the uses of heritage data in data management, in heritage management, including planning. And then there's at the end, it says recommendations and sort of some forward-thinking ideas of how people can work together and sort of keep this going. So anyway, it's be published in 2024. We're sort of at the end of the editing process, and it will be an ebook as well as
Who's publishing it?
Getty Publications.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so it'll be available for free as an
Yeah.
ebook. And then also they will be printing, a limited amount of hard copies, So if you're using it for a class, students are gonna use
Textbook.
the slick ebook, that takes you right to sources and the bibliography, just links to everything. And so it's really fabulous. But no, I'll let you know. I don't know if they're gonna do anything in particular when the book is published and launched, but they will do things in the heritage world. But it's really meant for a worldwide audience, not just an American audience.
Mhm. Good, thanks for that update. Any other board member comments? Yes.
Yeah, once upon a time, you should be at this point in the meeting, people usually talk about the organizations that they were part of and what was going on in those organizations and what events were coming up.
Mhm.
So, I know that, general discussion that I heard lately around town is that Modernism Week ticket for some events are not selling well. So, you can actually go onto their website and search by the different organizations that are putting on different events.
Mhm.
So if you want to support a certain organization in general, or you're curious about which event they are putting on, you can go up and type in like Pumpkin Conservation Foundation or Pumpkin Modern Committee. You can see what event they're mounting. So they are all putting on great events. So I'd encourage all of us to go onto that website and look at what the different organizations are putting on this for this Modernism Week, because ticket sales are slow. So maybe if we help them just kind of get the word out and encourage our friends, family, people we might know that are coming to town for Modernism Week to go and look at the various organization pages and try to support them or drive people to their event. So that's how they sustain themselves through Modernism Week events and ticket sales.
Very good, thank you. Thanks, very very thoughtful. Any other comments from anyone? Okay, staff comments? Any staff comments?
I'll zip through these as quickly as possible. I have a lot, unfortunately. The first one is, HSPB minutes. I know you guys approved a series of minutes this time. I thank you for reviewing all of those. Very, excited to work them. Moving forward, though, we did get directives that our minutes that we approve are going to be pared down, so they're gonna be more action minutes, plus a little bit of description related to the motion. They will not be as descriptive as the last three. And so I just wanted to give you guys a warning before we get our next set of minutes and wonder why. That is the directive, and all of the boards are doing that, so, and that's related to everything being recorded. So we have the recordings available for kind of looking back at, hey, what did I say? So the minutes will serve more as an action item or action summary. I'll make you to
Even planning commission?
Lisa, correct? Planning commission meeting?
Wow.
Yeah, action meeting. The next thing is 2024, which is upon us. We will be meeting in person like we are today. So we'll be meeting in the large conference room, first Tuesday of the month, 5:30. So, if you, know in advance that you can't attend, please email me and let me know, because I need to verify that we have a quorum. Just four. So we have 7 members, which makes it really, it's a lot off my plate in terms of being worried about that, but please let me know if you are aware of, your scheduling conflicting, so that we can make note of that. We still will have the opportunity, for public to join virtually, but we will be meeting in person. And then, let's see, for the January meeting, as of right now, there isn't anything tracking for the January meeting. It's actually scheduled for the 2nd, which is the first Tuesday of the month. So there's a high possibility that it could be canceled unless we get something that we can put on that meeting. If it comes a little bit later, we may have to schedule a special meeting, so I'll keep you notified of that. We do have a series of nomination reports that will be coming forward to you. We're just not ready at this time to make the January 2nd meeting. So keep that in mind, and I'll let you know in an email how that scheduling works out. I sent everyone an email about some airport updates related to tenant finishes. If you have questions, please reach out and let me know.
I'm sorry, related to what?
Tenant finishes, there's a tenant finish application that came through. And I think there was a desire to understand what that looked like, so I sent everyone the details, just in screenshots.
As
Yeah.
It was
scheduled.
today.
It was
So I
just
just
a quarter
wanted
to
to-
5.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, just so that they knew it went.
I'm not up to date every second.
Yeah.
4:45.
If you have questions, let me know, and I can help answer that. The airport obviously is going through a lot of different projects. They have a lot of tenant finished applications coming through on all areas of the concourse. The master plan, and the garnering of information is kind of a separate thing. Anything that comes before, the Wexler, facade, that, I'll keep you updated. But the tenant finish, I think there was an interest in understanding what that looks like. So some of that information, if you have questions, email me and let me know, and I can give you the details of what you want to know. Can you pull up that presentation on the second one? So this is, something that came up. I just wanted to let you guys know about it. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of purview we have for this, but this is the visitor center. So I was recently made aware that this plan existed. We have a traffic island, which was part of the original design. As you can see in the image on the right-hand side, that traffic island is not part of that site. It's actually in the right of way, that's owned by, and there are some major projects that are being planned around that corner. And so, we don't have purview. I'm kind of overextending and trying to see if we can get some sort of consensus to
So major
redesign.
projects, On this,
Correct.
Oh,
like what?
yeah.
It's related to, ADA compliance for ramps, there's a bike trail, there's a lot of projects that are kind of cycling through that little area right there. So it came to our attention, I reached out to engineering and the bodies involved to see if there's any way we can have a discussion to try and save, that planter from being completely, eaten away, eaten up by the actual, plans that they have. Like I mentioned, it's actually, in the right of way, so we don't have actual purview over it for our ordinance. But I am having conversations with them to see if they can redesign certain aspect of it, to see if we can save most, if not all, that circle, that planting circle. So that was part of the original design. Just wanted you guys to be,
But didn't they do a CEQA or 106 analysis for impacts to?
because it's not part of the actual, it's not designated that was part. It's not-
I know, but it's right next to something that is.
Original.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, they know better than that.
This is Caltrans?
Yes, they know better than
What
that.
district is this? This is the seven.
Who's the applicant? Who's doing it?
The application, the project, it's the Caltrans project.
Okay.
But they, it's, you know, one of their huge responsibilities is doing environmental compliance.
So does the public have to write a letter saying you're not following section 106? I mean, what do we do?
or
Right now,
CEQA.
we're talking to them and seeing what we can do to save that piece. I mean, it's not gonna take up the entire corner. It's that main planter that we're seeing.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the impacts. I mean, they have to do a report on potential impacts.
Visual, you know,
Yeah, all kinds. I used to do this for a living. I mean,
it's
it's
not
for
indirect,
Caltrans.
yes, indirect impacts.
Right, yeah, that's important. You can't just, you have to be tough about it. Do you need public input? Do I have to write a letter or that's what I'm asking?
Not at the moment. Let me see where we are at in terms of the conversation, but I can be back in and see, where we're tracking. Because right now we, because it's on our radar, we are having the conversations with the different agencies and seeing where we can, what we can do.
They should do the report. They should do what they're supposed to do. Simple as that.
So I wanted you guys to be aware that that conversation was being had, and it's, I'll keep you updated on where we're landing on this. It's a project that actually was gonna go ahead and move forward with, and so they put it on pause right now. That's where I need to,
That would be a lawsuit, right?
wanted to bring that up.
Like the conflicts monitoring.
Well.
And
Thing is another.
the next one is for, I think everyone already has been updated about this, but the golf course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different.
So here, I took a lot of images of the actual, oh yeah. And.
Hey.
Yeah.
So I was out there the first day when they started to take it down and I emailed him and let him know that it was coming down and he came out the following day to go and look at it. And so I had a lovely chat with him as he was watching it come down. And I think, I'm pretty sure it made his day, but.
But that was our recommendation, right?
It was
As
part of our
the-
recommendation and city council took notice of that and also wanted to
Yeah.
see that and make sure it happened. That awning was a metal structure and so they were out there with saws and they cut that open. There was a lot of that, there was like rotten water that spilled out of one of those and it like, it fell all over the building, but they did a really great job, cleaned everything up. Made sure it looked,
Mhm. Mhm.
it opened it back up. And so now we have removed that awning and we have that opening. As it was originally
It looks
designed
great.
and intended.
Very cool.
So,
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up and say that as more, you do. hear
Success.
there's an impact.
Yeah. Some good things happen.
And then hopefully everyone got the email about the holiday party. And it let me know if it didn't go out properly, but we have a holiday party for all of the boards that is scheduled for December 21st, Thursday. So
It's the 26th. It's the 21st.
21st.
Is there a time for that yet?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Mhm.
Yeah. You can put that on your calendar,
What time was it again?
6 P.M.
Are we supposed to bring anything like last time?
If, exchange a gift.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, but,
Gift
but
exchange.
we don't need to, last time, we did a potluck, so.
Oh, in terms of food.
I didn't get any of this.
You didn't get any of
No.
that, okay, so I'm sure. I think the email invite may have come from our director, the planning director.
Yeah, it did.
Chris Adams. Okay, so I'll go ahead and forward that over to.
Thank you.
Mhm. So the 21st, 6 o'clock, and it's gonna be, Kathy Werman.
Mhm.
Ms. Long. I'll forward that information to you. That's it.
Okay, so, well, thank you. What a nice meeting we had, lots of discussion. So seeing no further discussions, this meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board is adjourned at 7:38 PM. And the next meeting possibly will be Tuesday, January 2nd at 2024 at 5:30 in this large conference room, unless we hear otherwise. So thanks to all of you for a really great meeting and your participation. And best wishes for holidays, and I'll see you at the party.
Can we just leave these here if we don't do anything? with them?
Yeah, I'll just talk more.
Okay, great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.